found themselves telling her their life stories, so they never got round to asking about hers, which suited Jude very well. She had met Grant Roxby and his wife Kim on a holistic holiday in Spain. He had made an indecent amount of money in computers, and the Roxbys had at the time been looking for some dimension in our lives beyond the material. The couple, particularly Grant, had embraced the various therapies, counselling and soul journeys available on the holiday with enormous butterfly enthusiasm. He had the ability, which must have been invaluable in his business career, to get completely caught up in the moment. His self-belief was total, and so was his belief in a new idea. The fact that the next day he could believe in an opposing idea with equal conviction never dented the self-belief. He liked to think that he went as deeply into everything as the very soul of his being. In fact, he went as deeply into everything as the sole of his shoe. Grant Roxby's enthusiasms were infectious. His past was scattered with the husks of lifestyle options he had snatched up and discarded without recrimination or rancour. Jude wondered whether moving out of London to the country was just the latest in this series. Certainly their relocation had nothing to do with her. She hadn't even lived in Fethering when she'd met Grant and Kim, but they had quickly followed up on her change of address card when they moved into the area. The Roxbys had, as ever, done the thing in style. Pelling House, the Fedborough mansion they had instantly settled on after one viewing, was a tall, late Georgian oblong, red brick in the best sense, with 3 stories and a cellar. The frontage boasted a classical white portico, and stone steps led down to Pelling Street, one of the town's most exclusive residential addresses. The rooms were high, with tall windows which had folding shutters on the inside. There were 2 staircases, a rather grand one in the hall, and another at the back of the house, used in the past for invisible domestic stage management by the servants. The previous owners of Pelling House had made a start on renovating the property, but there was no doubt that Grant Roxby's computer-generated millions would soon be employed to complete the job to an even more exacting standard. On the evening of the dinner party, any suggestion that moving to Fedborough had been a mere whim would have been condemned as sacrilege. Grant and his wife were totally caught up in their new dream. "It's going to be so great for the children," Kim enthused. She was a thin, blonde woman in her early 40s, dressed down in designer hippie expensively cut jeans and mock snakeskin cowboy boots. Grant, sleek with success, his hair an unlikely chestnut, wore Levi's, a blue fleece and leather moccasins. Their clothes struck a more casual note than those of their guests, except for Jude. The 2 couples who had been invited demonstrated the extremes of Fedborough fashion and the resolution of the dilemma which must have faced them earlier in the evening. What level of dress do you think these new people expect? Donald and Joan Durrington had opted for the traditional. It wasn't difficult for him. As one of the local doctors, he wore the uniform of a double-breasted pinstriped suit. If his bleeper summoned him, he would look appropriate at a patient's bedside or even deathbed. Because he was potentially on duty, Donald Durrington was drinking only mineral water, but his wistful air as he watched others' wine glasses being filled suggested he'd rather not be on duty. His wife, who was also on the mineral water, had perhaps overdressed for the occasion, but only by comparison with the host and hostess's jeans. She was wearing a little black cocktail number, decorated round the top with spangly black beads. The chest, revealed by the décolletage, was freckled and slack. Its depth suggested greater confidence than did her uneasy blue eyes. Her hair had been recently and neatly cut, also recently blonded. Given the thinness of her frame, her face was surprisingly broad, puffy under heavy makeup. Though she hadn't contributed much to the general conversation, earlier in the evening Joan Durrington had spoken with trepidation of her approaching 60th birthday. Trepidation, indeed, seemed to be her dominant emotion. She kept looking nervously at her husband, as though fearful she might in some way let him down. The Burnthorpes, Alan and Yoka, were at the more casual end of the clothes spectrum. He, trying to look younger than his late 40s,